And we are back, and we just finished watching 2022's Kimi, rated R, with a runtime of 1 hour and 29 minutes. This is the latest from writer David Koepp and director Steven Soderbergh. This tells the story of a young woman who is, what's the thing? She doesn't like to go outside.
She's got a multitude of problems. She was like agoraphobic. She was germophobic. She was anal retentive as far as like everything must be just so.
And she'd been raped.
You find out through the story that she'd been assaulted, which I think triggered all of this. Right. And then you had COVID on top of that, and she lost her dad. She lost her dad.
Doesn't have a really good relationship with her mother.
Yeah, her relationship with her mother is kind of strained.
And has a very strange relationship with the boy across the way, Terry.
Yeah, that's also there.
Yeah, she's a hot mess. She is a hot mess.
Good terminology there.
Yeah. But the big one is that she's agoraphobic. She does not go outside.
Does not want to go outside. I'm guessing that's because the trauma from the attack. Yeah, and like she says in the story that COVID didn't help matters much, and it sort of like pushed her even deeper into her little world. And fortunately for her, she doesn't really have to go out because she has a computer job analyzing voice recordings from an Alexa-like device
called Kimi. Right. I guess we should talk about stuff, and then I don't know if this is something we want to spoil. This is fairly recent. I think it just got released. So I guess let's go through it, and then if we want to speak to spoilers, we can, or we don't have to, I guess. What did you think?
This one didn't grab me. I had a hard time staying awake, to be honest. It wasn't that interesting to me. I could see where the story was going, and I don't know. The characters just didn't grab me. Didn't interest me. Angela, I don't know. There was just like a disconnect there. I didn't really feel invested in her character. She had like her weird little tics and whatnot. I don't know. It just didn't work for me.
What would have made this better for you?
Maybe a little bit more personality from her, or I don't know. I feel shallow saying that. It's just there had to be something there that grabbed you. I mean, the only charming person in the whole thing was that weird Russian hacker that she would speak
Darius.
to.
I thought he was great, yeah.
And everybody else just was very, very wooden. Like everybody's performance in this, the bad guys, the assassins, the
big tech guy.
The big tech guy. Well, let's be honest, Derek Delgado's not a thespian. He's a great magician. And
I was going to say, kudos to you. You picked that up. I was going to say, wow, I wouldn't have correlated the two unless I looked at the IMDb page.
Yeah, but it's none of the characters really were interesting. Even like the head assassin guy, I guess he was supposed to be menacing, but he just seemed kind of bumbling to me at the end. They all seemed like a bunch of bumblers at the end. I was like, I'm supposed to be scared of these guys? And then, I mean, I guess we'll talk about that in the spoilers, but just the whole resolution of the thing was... nothing really felt... It just didn't feel like they put a lot of effort into this. It was almost like a 1, 2, 3 sort of progression of events. I never felt any twists or turns. I never felt any suspense or anything like that. There were several moments where I was just like, none of this would really be happening if she would just be like, hey, you know what? I think we should just call the police. Or just call the police herself. Or she was in an office with a whole bunch of people. I mean, hey, who are those two guys over there? Why are they chasing me? I think they want to hurt me. Right. Do you really think nobody in the office would be like standing up and doing something? Come on.
So my take was I didn't dislike this as much as you did. I think the hindrance here was the time frame, because you're trying to get a lot of story within an hour and a half. An hour and a half these days isn't a long time. An hour and a half is usually like a horror movie. So this is more of a dramatic piece. And I think that I agree with you. There was some kind of letdown as far as like the building of the character. I think the writer tried to paint these little strokes of what the Angela character was, whether it was when she finally goes outside, the very wooden way in which she walks, the constant like sanitizing of the hands. There were definitely little things in there that definitely spoke to the character, but I don't feel like she was fleshed out enough that she would even feel any kind of empathy or sympathy or compassion for this character. She definitely lacked social graces. Right?
Yeah.
She definitely lacks social graces. And I think there were hints of that in the story. I mean, at the very, very beginning, where she has that almost debilitating incident where she cannot leave the house. Like, she's not even out the door and she's already going through
a huge panic attack.
Right. This huge panic attack. So I think they made the effort to do it. I think the thing that hurt this film was it was too short. I think if they had added maybe another 20 minutes to this, where they really fleshed out the bad guys / assassins, they really fleshed out even a little bit more of the Derek Delgado character, that Bradley guy. Rita Wilson's in it very briefly. I was like, what was the point of that whole thing other than to, I guess...
That whole scene
I wish she was like the company stooge where she had the files erased. I don't know.
Did she have them erased, or was it the assassins?
She had to have had them erased because how else would they have known about this?
I don't know.
He definitely worked for the company. He was definitely this guy's kind of eyes, and he knew about the Angela character. So, because he calls Bradley and tells him, did you give your little friend a device? So the Rita Wilson character's in on this. Well, not in on this thing.
Well, that was another thing I didn't quite understand. They're saying, the assassin asked Derek Delgado, did you give your friend a little device? Mm-hmm. This is something that everybody could buy in stores. This is something that apparently is like sweeping the nation as far as being as the premier home assistant thing. So what the hell did that mean? It was like she was on a beta test or something of a device that nobody had?
Well,
no.
His whole thing was, I just needed to keep on top of her. So maybe he gave it to her as a way of communicating with her.
The way that was written, it made it sound like these devices were rare or something like that. And that's not the case. This was the 6th iteration of the device. That was weird. There was just a lot of stupid plot holes in this story, and I really feel that, like, especially in that Rita Wilson scene, the whole conversation between the two of them was just them repeating dialogue back to each other over and over again until finally it was like, yo, you know what, you're right, I will call the FBI. It's like, why did I sit through that? Mm-hmm. Just make it seem, I don't know. Put some more meat on that bone.
I think the purpose of that scene was that she was supposed to be like this person who was supposed to be kind of on Angela's side, but ultimately isn't, because she's obviously for the company, right?
There's that, but I don't know, make that more obvious to me. Make it seem like there's a huge conspiracy going on. As far as you could tell, it seems like it's just Bradley, Derek Delgado, and the 3 assassins. And that's really all that you're really given. There's no meeting between Rita Wilson and Bradley or any other people.
No, but she had the information and she obviously told them. Because then you're not really. She's reporting something. Do we know if she's really in on it? I would like to know that she's in on it. I don't know. I mean, she had to have been, because
it would have been a hell of a lot more interesting is if it were some sort of like grand conspiracy and not just the creator and
not
whoever.
I'm not going to say it's a grand conspiracy, but there's definitely more pieces to this puzzle, because in the scene where Angela gets caught and drugged or whatever, somebody hits her with an umbrella or something, obviously cuts her to drug her, and then that blonde woman. Exactly. So there's more people involved in this whole...
You never see those people again or
because
anything. As far as I know,
secondary.
They all work for the guy with the gun at the end.
R,
they all work for R. And R doesn't really work for the company. R has been hired by Bradley to clean up his mess.
Or he's part of the company. Maybe he's the cleaner. There's people in companies that's their job. You know what I mean? Look at the whole thing with Harvey Weinstein. You had 30 years. You had a company that just...
Well, okay. In that particular case, that was a bunch of scumbag lawyers getting together.
But it wasn't just the lawyers.
To pay off people.
It wasn't just the lawyers. Obviously HR is involved.
This was a guy.
These complaints are coming to them.
This was a guy who was there to kill people. And I don't think he was really I don't think that he was officially part of the company because Bradley was paying him out of his own pocket.
Maybe he wasn't involved directly with the company, but he was known.
Like, I don't think he was chief assassinating officer or something like that.
No, he would have a different name, obviously.
Yeah, Master of Whispers or...
He was interwoven with Bradley's day-to-day, for sure. I don't think his job was specifically to assassinate anybody. I think he was just a fixer. He was just a guy that got hired to fix things.
Yeah, by Bradley.
By Bradley, right. But other people within the company, listen, they were going to go public. Was that what it was? Because they were saying at the beginning, right? They're going public. Yeah. That is a very sensitive time in a company's, because now you're under the microscope, right? The stuff that you did in the dark is now going to be in the light. So, and especially there, because you want to kind of make sure that you come out of the gate at a higher price. Remember, I think she said $28 a share and he said 31, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking in an abundance of numbers of stocks, which obviously as the owner, he would have that, right? You're talking about a lot of money. So nobody wants their money affected. And ultimately, that's what this all comes down to, right? The people with the money control the narrative. So the Rita Wilson character, what was she? Not sustainability, but she was like the chief whatever.
I thought she was like the HR lead.
It wasn't HR. It was something else. It wasn't described as HR, but she was like the chief something officer. And she's the person that is supposed to, kind of like an HR person, make sure that things are running smoothly in the company. She knows where her bread is buttered. Is she going to be for the employee or is she going to be for the company? She's going to be for the person that signs the check, right? Because she even kind of like needled the Angela character and brought up stuff that was very, very personal. And that exchange where Angela's like, how did you guys get my eye data?
Scan, yeah.
Right. And then she's very like kind of like motherly, but also menacing, like, oh no, you've agreed to that. And then you have the Zoe character say, or the Angela character say, nobody reads that.
Yeah, well, that's her fault.
True. And the Rita Wilson character doesn't mention that, but you can feel that vibe. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, you should be more cautious about
the things
that you sign. Exactly. But that's another thing. But that's completely in the Angela character's defense. Nobody reads any of that stuff. I know I certainly don't. I'm sure I've signed documents at hiring time that God only knows what I'm signing. Mm-hmm. So again, I didn't dislike this as much as you did. I enjoyed it. I didn't have a problem with it. I enjoyed that it was only an hour and a half, but I think because of the brevity of the time of this piece, a lot of things kind of fell away and weren't able to be addressed as properly as they should have. I mean, I understood the point of the Terry character, the guy from across the way, but the way she treated him was not very nice. And it was like, it was almost weird to watch and still feel sympathy for Angela's character. But then when you find out that she's been sexually assaulted, it doesn't make it any better, but you kind of understand her frigidness or her aloofness a little bit more.
To me, it felt like he was useful to her in that respect. Mm-hmm. I also got the feeling they were trying to go for a whole rear window vibe.
Yes.
Except instead of they basically replaced the binoculars with a Siri device. I don't know. Maybe they're trying to be clever there. It just didn't work for me. This felt like a very point A to point B movie. and there really wasn't anything that too exciting or dramatic in it. And there were just so many instances where it could have just been like, hey, I'm calling the cops.
Right.
And end of movie, roll credits.
I'm trying to think what could have made this better. I think in my mind, if they had fleshed it out more,
maybe showing the reach of these people's power. Like I said, making it a bit more obvious that everybody was like against her and like wheeling her into some sort of trap scenario. But to me, it just felt like, okay, you got these three guys who are just, I'm the evil assassin man, and these are my two henchmen, and we do great work. We're don't worry, we got it all covered. And then there was like they had their little Russian hacker guy who was sitting in his living room with his grandma or whatever. Yeah. And he's like, oh, yeah, I got her. And then she throw her phone away. And then, how are you going to get her? Where is she? He's like, it doesn't matter where she is. It matters where she's going.
Right.
And it was...
But that sort of answered your own question. You said to show you the reach of these people.
Right,
they have
but
people...
Even with that reach, they didn't come off to me as being really super competent. Because... even through all of that, you could have just called the damn police.
Right.
And then at the end, the whole thing at the end, it's just, were they the Three Stooges the entire time? Were we supposed to be afraid of these guys? And suddenly they're just like, they might as well just kill themselves. It was, and the way the guy was acting.
Which guy?
The head guy, the guy with the gloves and the gun with the silencer. You could see he was trying to be sinister and menacing, and he really just did not have that ability. There were like, he's looking at her laptop, and then the FaceTime thing on the laptop goes off, and he's just like, no. And then he gives her ample time to answer it, and Robin Gibbons' face is on the screen for like 2 whole seconds before he's like, ooh, and he shuts the lid. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Are you that incompetent? You're supposed to be, you got the suit and the gun with the silencer, and you're wearing gloves in the middle of like summertime, and you're like, you slick back hair, you're this badass, and you don't have the wherewithal to fucking shut the goddamn laptop when the FaceTime message comes in. So this way the girl's mother could just see you and your idiot friend standing there like, what do we do? Get the fuck out of here.
Well, I don't think that these guys...
They're getting paid so much money that Derek DelGaudio is like, that's everything I have. I need this fixed. That's everything I have left. All of his money is gone, paying these boobs to take care of his business.
Well, I think in that sense, I think that they probably... I don't think that they had a track record of murder, so there's that. But
the whole thing was about the murder that they committed.
Right. No, it was, but the guy with the silencer wasn't committing the murders. He had his cronies.
Oh, yeah, and those guys
weren't any better either.
No, they were a bunch of idiots.
And then I also thought it was interesting in the van when she's drugged. I think it was the guy with the glasses who basically says, do you ever wonder like what these people do to deserve to be killed or something to that effect? And the other guy's like, no, I don't think about that. So I think that they tried to address things. I think, again, it was the lack of time. I think if they had added another 20 minutes, if they had really worked on the script a little bit better.
I just feel like nobody cared.
I don't think that nobody cared. I think that this was just one of those things where it was like, I have an idea for a thing and I want to make it.
Yeah.
So,
honestly, that's that. It's like, hey, is anybody doing anything this weekend?
Yeah. Let's
make a movie.
Let's make a movie. Right.
And that's what we got.
Fair enough. I mean, I think, again, I didn't dislike this as much as you did. I think if I was going to give notes, it would be to make this a little longer
I would make it longer.
Well, you know what? It's only an hour and a half. It's an hour and 29 minutes. So it's not long in the slightest.
I would have
not compared to other stuff.
I would have developed the script a little bit better and made the story a bit more intriguing. I don't think the picture's length was the problem. I just think the story wasn't interesting. I don't feel like any of the people involved were truly invested in it. It like we said, it felt like, hey, let's get together and make a movie this weekend.
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, I think everybody's performance was decent.
Even the credits. It looked like, I mean, the credits came up. It looked like an after school special with that font and just like it just looked.
I don't agree. I think that the script, it just wasn't there yet. I think this is like,
yeah, the script wasn't there. I'm not saying that this couldn't have been a good film if it had like gone through some script rewrites and maybe some suggestions put in as far as like making things a bit more intriguing. The kernel of the story is there. It's not really 100% original. Like I said, it's
modern day Rear Window.
Exactly. They're trying to make an evolution on that kind of story
with the tech aspect to it.
With a tech aspect to it, but that wasn't done. And this is what we got, and this is what we watched. I'm probably just gonna give it a 4.
A 4?
Yeah.
A 4.
It's not good.
So this was worse than Nightmare Alley to you, because I think you gave Nightmare Alley a little bit more. I think you gave it a 4.5 or 4.75.
Nightmare Alley at least looked pretty. This didn't look pretty at all. I thought her apartment was nice.
I thought her apartment was great. It was huge. Yeah. I'm like, how the hell did she get all that space?
A tech worker.
I don't agree with you there. I think that the story here was more interesting than Nightmare Alley. I think much as I wanted to like the other one, and a pretty movie just doesn't make a good story. So,
well, for me, like I said, this felt underdeveloped, and Nightmare Alley was basically 2 underdeveloped movies. So with
a longer runtime, so that's more taxing on your brain. I mean, I still would put this over Nightmare Alley. It may have been a longer
runtime, but I was more interested in those characters than I was in these ones. And another thing, honestly, maybe I'm just judging it harshly, but seriously, those ridiculous assassins were they were the shits. And also, just the fact, hey, call out for help, call up the cops. Do anything that any rational person in the world would do. Mm-hmm. If you're in a crowded office building and 2 weirdos are chasing you, say, hey, there's 2 weirdos trying to chase me in this office building. Are they supposed to even be here? Do you think nobody in the office would have stood up and be like, what are you doing here? Those guys weren't even wearing suits. They were wearing like mechanic outfits.
I don't know, because think about it. I mean, she went to the office to get help from the Rita Wilson character woman, right, and that sort of did not pan out the way she thought it would.
It wasn't like she was on a floor, like on some sort of like floor where there wasn't any sort of. It wasn't like she was on a floor, like some deserted floor where it was just Rita Wilson's office and nothing else. Mm-hmm. That was a crowded office. There was fields of cubicles all filled with people.
But you also have to understand that she went to the office to get help. Remember, her manager, I guess the Andy Daly character, told her that she would be the point of contact to bring up this sort of issue with, right?
Yeah.
So she goes to the office, right, to try to get help, but then the Rita Wilson character obviously tells someone, who then that person then deletes the file, and then Darius is like, what did you do? Because now all the files are deleted. So this thing is bigger than...
That also didn't make any sense either, because Darius didn't want to get the files. He didn't even really know about the files. He just gave her access so that she could get the files. Mm-hmm. So why is he contacting her? He wouldn't even know about the files.
I think she was supposed to... She gave him the device number so that she could... Because remember, she asked him something and he was like, absolutely, you can figure out where something is by the device number. Because she's like, oh, well, somebody told me you couldn't. And he was like, I call bullshit. They lied, right?
Yeah, but in order to do that, she needed some sort of master key.
Right.
And he gave her a version of the master key that she could use.
But if he's giving that to her, then he obviously has access to what she's looking at.
But he's not looking at the files.
How do you know he's not looking at the files?
Why would he? He doesn't care about that.
How do you know?
They didn't say it.
Doesn't matter. Just because you didn't see it doesn't mean it didn't happen.
In a
and
movie,
if he found out that the files were deleted and he tells her, then obviously he's looking. And
yeah, that's the thing.
That's just human nature.
Why is he
Curiosity is human nature.
He being targeted for death?
Because he's not the one that's bringing it up, and I'm sure he's.
If he knows what these files are,
but
because he looked at them, even though in the movie it's never stated he looked at them or even did anything associated with that.
Maybe he's looking at it through a back channel. You don't know. He's like
you're making an awful lot of assumptions
because
to
you don't know
a poorly written script.
I understand that, but that's what I'm saying. But that wasn't written in a way.
That's why this movie fails. That's why this movie fails, because when I'm watching this, I shouldn't have to do the heavy lifting that the writer was supposed to take care of. It's not my job. My job is to sit and be entertained. And if you give me something and you're like, this is the most entertaining shit ever, and I look at it and I'll be like, what the fuck are you talking about? There's nothing entertaining here unless I use my own imagination and fill in the holes that you failed to fill in.
I understand that, but there are movies that are very ambiguous. And
No. I'm not saying, they left a mystery for me to solve and think about and wonder and ponder. I'm just talking about gaping plot holes. Things that should have been taken care of that hurt the overall story. The reason why she gets the text messages is because basically they were like, we need a reason for her to get worried. Well, why? Why would she suddenly look around? Oh, well, maybe that Russian dude gives her a text message on her phone. Why? I don't know. We'll let the audience figure it out. No. That's lazy shit writing. This was something...
Again... It's only an hour and 29 minutes, and I think that's what hurt this film.
I've seen films that were an hour and a half long, and they were tight.
But that's a different type of movie. Again, works. That usually works in a horror genre. But when you're doing something like this, where you have complex characters and you have a little bit of nuance,
you could totally do it in suspense.
I don't agree.
This was just poor writing. Poor writing.
It wasn't the best. It wasn't the worst.
It wasn't. No, I'm not saying this is the worst thing you'll ever see in your life.
I'm not saying definitely the worst thing you'll ever see. I'm just saying writing-wise.
It is not a good movie. It is not a good movie.
There's nothing dynamic about the cinematography.
It gets a 4. I'm being generous.
I disagree. I completely disagree. I don't think that this, again, the script, not strong. Absolutely agree with you there. Again, I think that the big hindrance here was timing. If they had fleshed out the story a little bit better, some of the characters a little bit better, I think this could have moved in an even more positive direction.
I think they could have done that, and they wouldn't have needed to make it more time.
I disagree. I think you need to have more time.
That's beside the point. My main point is it's just bad writing, and they should have fixed it up before they filmed anything. It could have been. It was mediocre writing. I will grant you that. It could have been 2 hours. It could have been an hour and a half. It could have been an hour. Write a better story. Make things more interesting. Give me a reason to believe that this girl is in danger and that all her problems could not be solved by just saying, hey, I need some help here. That's seriously. If you can't get past that hurdle of isolating your main character to the point where the audience feels that she is in genuine peril, then you need to fix your goddamn story. There's a reason why in all the movies that you see nowadays, oh, I don't got any cell phone service. Oh, no, my phone broke. Oh, damn, too bad in the Act 1 I dropped my phone in the toilet. There's always a reason why the main person can't just call out for help. Oh, I got a gun in my back. I can't do it. There's something there. And in this story, they didn't do anything. She was in several public places where she could have asked for help, and they just didn't do anything. And I'm like, why?
Listen, fair enough. I disagree with you. I
Do you think that she couldn't have just asked for help?
Well, to that point, she was going to the FBI office, and in my mind, it's like, why didn't she ever make it there? It was only a 24-minute walk. So I don't know how she wound up at her house instead of the FBI office, but that's not for me to speculate about.
Well, they dragged her to her house after they drugged her.
Oh, that's right. They caught her before she entered the building.
Yeah, and somehow she snaps out of the drugs just at the moment of she entering the door. And then weirdo from across the street just decides, I'm going to be a knight in shining armor and go downstairs, even though I have the same problems that she does. And that was another thing that was stupid.
Yeah.
If he really genuinely had the same mental issues that she did,
he wouldn't have left his
there's
apartment.
no way he would have left the house.
Yeah, he would have just called the police.
Yeah, he would have just called the damn cops. He would have been like, "Oh my god, my neighbor across the street is being dragged into her house by two guys in mechanic suits."
Sure. No, there's things in here that don't work. Absolutely, the script is mediocre. The cinematography, there's nothing dynamic about it. I thought the performances were decent. None of them blew me away. None of them were that compelling. Not even the Zoë Kravitz character. So I agree with you there. I think the kernel of the story here was interesting. I think they could have written a stronger script if they had allotted more time to address certain things in the story that kind of didn't pan out. I didn't particularly like the Angela character.
Yeah. There was nothing. Really
there was that, which is kind of weird because she's the main protagonist and you're supposed to sort of feel something for the main protagonist. But I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed it enough to sit through it, to not fall asleep and be entertained slightly. I mean, it wasn't the best thing I ever saw. It wasn't the worst thing I ever saw. But I don't think I judged this as harshly as you did. I think I would give this film probably a 6, maybe 6.5, maybe a 6. A 6, I guess. Again, it was interesting. I think the kernel of the story was interesting. I think there's an indictment here about these devices and the responsibility, the moral responsibility of these companies. Like, they think in this particular case, the makers of this Kimi device are very hands off. Like, oh, we don't get involved. That was something that was stressed a lot in the beginning by the Andy Daly character. He was like, just delete the files, right? So I thought that was interesting.
Well, in that case, it's like, what's because the big thing with all these devices is, oh, they're always listening, they're invading your privacy. Mm-hmm. But then on the other hand, like in the case of this movie, it's well, what if you're invading the person's privacy for the greater good of possibly reporting a murder or catching a murder? Mm-hmm. So what's the greater crime here?
Again, I think
what's the responsibility?
To that point, I think again it depends on who is getting reported on. Bradley is a person of privilege. He is, I guess, the maker of this company. He has a lot at stake, millions of dollars. So there's different things going on here.
So it's okay to report on him.
No, it's what I'm saying is people in this world protect their own, right? The Rita Wilson character, she was protecting Bradley. R was protecting Bradley. Mm-hmm. All the players on R's team are protecting Bradley. Even though Bradley's a piece of shit and committed or had this woman murdered, right? He didn't murder her, but in essence he does because he's paying these people to murder this woman who he had an affair with, who then he was trying to get rid of, who then was going to basically out him, right? And create a huge scandal, possibly jeopardize his family life, his professional life. So a murder's a murder. Obviously, the Zoe character, she hears this and does the right thing by trying to get involved and get to the bottom of what's going on. I think this movie is also trying to say that there's different types of justices, right? There's the justice of people being persecuted for whatever reason, whether it's the color of their skin, their financial status, they're poor, so they must be guilty of something. They've stolen something, whatever it is. Then you have like your white collar criminals, which is, I guess, what Bradley's personality is, right? But he has the money and the means to kind of sweep this all under the rug, right? So there's an indictment of that here too. Then you also have I guess they try to address the thing about these devices and how intrusive they are, but is it intrusive if it's for the greater good? So I feel like there's a lot of things at play in this movie, or a lot of things that they try to talk about.
I don't think there's any kind of indictment as far as him being wealthy and
you don't think that?
No. Let me finish. There's a difference between using your money to game the system so that you get away with something. Mm-hmm. Basically buying off judges and buying off politicians to change the law in your favor. And then there's a difference between that and using your money to murder more people. Mm-hmm. Gaming the system is like a sort of thing that you would see in a film where it's like, oh, they're making an indictment against that. Just hiring people to kill people, you can't really make an indictment against that because it's just universally bad. It doesn't matter if you're rich or if you're scrounging up the last of your meager life savings to murder somebody. It's murder.
It is, but
there's no message like, oh, there's such a problem with rich people getting out of their bad doings by murdering the people that are coming after them.
But think about that. He had the means and the money. Obviously not a lot, because by the middle of the movie he's like, this is the last of my cash.
I'm not saying that that's not what he did, but you're making it sound like there's some sort of like message there about it. There isn't a message there about it. The only message I could see in this film, and I don't know what they're trying to say with it, is that, okay, these things are listening to us. But honestly, if they weren't listening to us, the bad guy would never have gone down. So are they saying sometimes it's good for it to be listening to us? Or are they saying that this is an invasion of privacy? Or are they saying that these things are, maybe they're dividing us to the point where we're not communicating with people anymore and we're all going to become agoraphobic lunatics in our house? I don't know. I honestly don't know where they were going with that. There's no real moral here. So you could bring it up and you could wonder about it and analyze it. But as far as the movie Kimi goes, it's not like when the great debaters come and discuss the moral ambiguities of having a device that listens to you and gives you information in exchange for that, but it's secretly like grabbing little bits of your private life. They're not going to use Kimi as an example of that movie Kimi really illustrated the evils or the good of this device. And that's I guess something you could say was another missed opportunity by the writers, because they could have delved into that maybe.
I think they tried, but I think again it didn't work.
I think what they were really doing was just, okay, well, this is just a tool to move our plot forward. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately for them, their plot was kind of not fully developed, and the characters weren't interesting. Angela really wasn't interesting. There was nothing. Usually when you have a character who's, this is the recluse, they're stuck in their house, there's some sort of way that you could get the charm of this character, or something interesting about this character that endears them to you, that makes you want to identify with them. You don't get anything of that with Angela. And I think that was the whole, the mechanism that they were supposed to convey that through was her relationship with the man from across the way, Terry, mm-hmm. through their text messages. But there wasn't enough of that. Mm-hmm. There really wasn't enough of that. It was almost just like Angela trying to reach out, failing, inviting him over for sex, And then just like the other time they had a conversation, it was just like, oh, I'm busy at the office. They're really like, I didn't get any sense of why they would be interested in each other other than, oh, look across the way. He looks pretty good. Oh, she's pretty. There was nothing beyond that.
Right. No, I agree.
It wasn't like they had some deep conversation. And in most movies, when they want to get you to know these characters, they'll have a sort of character moment between them. And probably the only time there was a conversation between them, I don't think Angela was even invested in that conversation. No. She was more concerned with changing her sheets. Yeah. And the guy was just jabbering on and on about just like mundane nonsense. Right. I don't know what he was talking about.
He was talking about trying to get her to go to a restaurant.
Yes, try to get her to go to a restaurant.
And that set her off because...
And it really felt like she was just like, okay, I've spent my 5 minutes on him. It's over. I have to clean the sheets because his germs are all over them. Goodbye.
Yeah.
And that was
she definitely no, but that scene highlighted her lack of social graces.
Right, but they're the main character. I want something that makes me like that character.
No, I completely agree. And again, I think that this wasn't developed enough. It should have been longer.
Yeah, well, it should have just been written better. They could have had a back and forth conversation about anything. She could have been changing the sheets, but also been invested in this conversation. She was not in the slightest.
Right.
And yeah, that does tell me something about her character, but I already knew that about her character. Mm. She's not very emotional, or she doesn't. Her emotional attachments aren't really her thing. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, give me something else then. Give her a sarcastic wit. Mm-hmm. Give her something that wasn't there.
Right. No,
and you had these opportunities to do so before you get to the whole, oh, I'm going to listen to this thing and possibly hear a murder.
Mm. I think that the timing or the time constraint, because they got this movie in an hour and 29 minutes, and I don't think that was enough time to develop anything or anyone specifically. So in the beginning, you see her interact with so many people. She interacts with the guy upstairs. She interacts with Terry, the neighbor from across the way. She has a brief, very strained conversation with her mother. She has her back and forth with Darius, the guy from Romania. So you do see her interact with people, but it's just not enough to give you an overall picture of who Angela is. And I think that hurts the film because, again, it doesn't allow you to really engage with this character, even like this character. So I think that they tried. I don't think that they were successful. I think the length of this film hurt it. I think they should have gone for something longer. I think maybe the thought was, let's make this 90 minutes or under. Just a quick one and done kind of thing. And you can have those kind of movies, but they have to be written exceptionally well for them to work. That wasn't the case here. I think the kernel of this story was interesting, and I think it could have been better. And I do agree with you. The mediocrity of the writing here doesn't help it. If anything, it hinders it. And I think looking at it now, also, the performances, nobody really wowed me. I think everyone was just okay. I don't think anybody rose to the bar of something. I mean, there are times when you watch a film where you're so mesmerized by an actor and their performance. And that didn't happen here. I think everybody was just okay.
Was just reading lines.
Right. So there's another thing that hurt this film. I think the writer of this film tried to really tackle way too much. And I think what they should have done is streamlined it. I mean, if you want to make Rear Window in modern day, then do that. You don't need to address all these little kind of things. Just make a good, interesting story. And I think the kernel here could have been better. It just didn't pan out. And that's my only critique. I think that they should have gone longer and gone a little bit more into the Angela character, because she is the main character and you want to root for her. But to me, I felt very detached from her. she had been assaulted. It was just like a sentence in here. And it's like something like that. It doesn't define you, but it also is a big part of why she is. And it wasn't addressed, and it felt like an afterthought, and it felt like something that was just added on to kind of build maybe that sympathy, but it didn't work here because it wasn't given the time that it should have been given. Something like that is traumatic.
Yeah.
So the fact that it was sort of just like a tacked on line, I think did it a disservice. So again,
I agree with you there 100%.
Yeah, I think
it did really feel like a tacked on line.
Yeah, and I think you're trying to get sympathy and empathy for this character, and you want the audience to root for them, but you're not doing it any favors by just, I guess, trying to pull on the heartstrings, like, oh, look, she's this way because of this horrible thing that happened to her.
I gotta be honest, I don't think it was even necessary.
Yeah, I don't either.
As the story goes, she could have just been agoraphobic because she was agoraphobic.
Exactly. Yeah.
It could have just been some sort of...
She could have had, like, she could have been on the spectrum. You know what I mean? It could have been explained in a completely different way. It didn't need to be that she was attacked. It could have just been, like, she had, like, this amazing hearing and she heard this thing.
Yeah.
So I think that just, I don't know. I just, yeah. Again, it wasn't the worst. It wasn't the best. What did I say? 6? You're going to give it a 4?
I'm giving it a 4. That's
a
generous.
4 and a 6.
A generous 4.
There was another movie that I saw of his recently, also on HBO Max for film discussion with Benicio del Toro and Don Cheadle. That also was just okay. I feel like, I don't know what Soderbergh's doing recently, but it just seems like, I mean, he just makes movies to make movies, I think, just to make stuff. I don't know if a lot of effort's being put into the other one looked prettier, if I remember right, but I guess ultimately skip this.
Yeah, I would skip this one.
Okay.
I would definitely say skip. I didn't like it. I did not think it was a good movie.
All right, and that's it from us, and we will bid you all a good night.
Okay. Good night.
Good night.